This is Alex Jusko, as a host for SAinActionTV. I'm here with my friend Aimee Levesque, part of Inclusive Theater. Aimee, how are you?
I am doing great. It's great to be here with you and great to see your smiling face. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, it's great to see you too. Um, just to start off, can you tell me a little bit about what Inclusive Theater is?
Sure. So, Inclusive Theater of Western New York is a theater company first, but we're also a performing arts company. So, what we are is an organization that looks at the arts and has opportunities for people who may not necessarily have opportunities to participate in said arts, whether they're local or beyond. And also provide a platform for these voices to be able to not only kind of work on their art, whether it's theater or painting or writing or whatever that is, but also the opportunity to use their voice. Um, I'm a firm believer that, this whole idea of nothing about me without me, right? Like no one should be telling anybody's story. And in Inclusive Theater, I like to say that, we pride ourselves on the fact that we're giving a platform to raise those voices.
Oh, wow, that's wonderful. I love that. That's really, really cool.
It's a lot of
Uh,
fun.
I we're going to talk about more how to get involved later, but for right now, I just want to ask, what's your involvement with Inclusive Theater? What's
So
your,
I
go
like
ahead.
in terms of my role. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, first, I'm the founder. So it grew out of a dream that I had that I saw the potential, particularly people with disabilities who I saw weren't getting the opportunities that I personally believe they should have. I am the parent of a 27-year-old daughter with autism, and she also was not giving these opportunities. And I kept seeing how great she was at these things she wanted to do, but there was no space for.
Mm.
So, for example, in high school, she wanted to do theater. And they said, oh, you can do theater, but you stand in the back and you can snap your fingers, right? You're part of the ensemble cast. Well, one of the things about Jessica is that she could memorize an entire script. And it baffled me that they would not put her at the front of the stage when she knew the entire script rather than even one part, but relegated her to the back. Okay. So that was kind of the first thing. But then I started talking to other folks, and it wasn't just happening to people with disabilities. It was also happening to people of color, people who were immigrants, people who were LGBTQ, all of these folks who had, I guess, a marginalized voice were not being given certain opportunities. And if they were secondary. So that was how Inclusive was born. Our kind of idea being that, you with work, anybody can become what they want to be.
Mm.
Now, that doesn't mean that you can just jump on stage and you're suddenly an actor. Everything takes hard work and determination. You've really got to keep at it for a long period of time. But when you are dedicated to doing that, which any person that has come to Inclusive has been, you can do terrific things. So I founded the organization and am now the executive and artistic director. So I help with the programming as well as now my latest role has been directing. So I'm wearing multiple hats. And it really is to continue to amplify voices. During the pandemic, right, one of the things that people with disabilities learned, well, no, not learned, but taught, was that, hey, we've been isolated a long time. You guys just learned about Zoom. And they're like, we knew about this. So they were able to amplify voice through some of the things that we do and that we're going to be talking about. So it was really just to give this platform to people who wanted it and who deserve that platform to be allowed to tell their story, to go back, whatever form that takes, whether it's, you're a painter and you really want to paint and you have CP and someone says, oh, you can't do that. Nonsense, right? Like you can, if you're given the opportunity to do it. And that's what our role is with Inclusive, is to make sure these opportunities continue to develop and exist for people. So we can see how awesome everybody is. Like we all are awesome. And when we give people that chance, man, it just makes the world a more beautiful place to be in.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really love that. That's amazing. What shows has Inclusive Theater done?
Oh my gosh. So before pre-pandemic or post-pandemic?
We'll talk about both. Let's talk about
Okay.
both.
Well, so before we had staged full-length productions. Our first, it was written by Baroness von Smith. It was called "And Where Will You Put the Things You Save?" and we did an alleyway theater. We were super excited about that. And that was our first large performance. Up until that point, we had done writing group, small writing and acting workshops. We did boot camps where you come in and we, from the page to the stage in one day, the fun activities. And then we also had some service learning that we were doing with local college students where they would come in and we would have conversations. We also did a reading where we wrote our stories and we presented it at hall walls. The people that wrote their work spoke their work, and it was available to, open to the public. And hopefully somebody has a recording of it somewhere because it was amazing. After that time, we moved to the Foundry, which is on Northampton Street, and we love it there. That's our home. And we started doing even more of kind of full-length performances, but differently staged. So for accessibility. So one of the things that we were finding is that we would go to a place and they'd say it's 100% accessible. And then we'd get there and you couldn't get in the door, or it's accessible if you lift somebody out of a wheelchair. That's nonsense. Like, no, that's not accessibility. So at the Foundry, it's very much accessible, even down to the restroom. So we wanted to make sure that we had a space where people could access for a number of ways. So we started doing the readings, and we did the Festival of Shorts, and that was, oh my gosh, I think it was 2018 now, where we found some online shorts that were super funny and had auditions, and we did 2 weeks of performances. And then sadly, our biggest one that happened pre-COVID, it's sad because, we probably won't do it this year, was Shakespeare in the parking lot. Last August, in 1,000 degrees outside, we, at the Foundry, they have a big area that is half outdoors, half indoors. And we turned that area into a Shakespearean, scene. And we did A Midsummer Night's Dream with a opening play that was written by a local playwright called the Tragedy of Slackbeth, which was hilariously funny. But it was a really terrific show. And then shortly after, we did another reading series, so I forgot about that. So it was Shakespeare, and then we had another fall, and it was Stigma. So we looked at plays that were only looking at things that impacted mental health and how people perceive mental health, because we know that it should not be stigmatized at all, that we should be helping folks, and sometimes we don't even realize the stigmatism is there, and we're doing it. And that one we did for a 3-week run, and that every single show sold out, so that we knew that people were getting it and they were seeing what the people that were auditioning and were acting had brought to the table. So prior to COVID, we had planned to do a spring production, and then everything shut down.
So you did mention that you guys have been doing things over Zoom all along, but what have you been doing during the pandemic?
So we basically realized within 2 weeks of being shut down that this was going to be where we were going to be for a while. Some of the folks that work with us have chronic conditions that even once the vaccination, that we had not known about at that point, but even once that would be released and everybody got it, it's still going to take some time before they're being able to get back into the world, right? Because it's not safe. So when the beginning of the pandemic started, we sat down and said, okay, what can we do here? Like, we know that we want to produce. And then going back to, like I told you, where, hey, people with disabilities, like, we've been isolated forever. Like, we know this is great. Let's get on Zoom, right? Like, it's going to be hard, but this is ours. Let's own it, right? And aside from accessibility issues of people not having computers or things of that nature, a large chunk of the people who participated in Inclusive prior began meeting. And we had our first weekly session. We were doing a weekly speaker series from April all the way into July. So every single week we had a special guest from some aspect, excuse me, of the arts community, who looked at arts and inclusion in the arts and why it was important for us to do that. And we looked at different types of art. So we looked at writers, playwrights. We had some friends that, for instance, Brian Donovan, who does voice acting for a whole bunch of stuff and has created Kelly's Hollywood. He came and talked about film. We had another set designer who does local films come in. just a plethora of people who were from such diverse backgrounds, not only talking about what they did, but talking about the importance of continuing and building momentum in inclusive practices. And again, I often will say disability a lot. It's because that's what I'm good at, right? Like that's what my dissertation work was in. This is what my daughter, this is the world we're in. But everybody that we talked to came from such varied lifestyles, and they were in fact people who were from these marginalized groups. And we knew at that point that if we had stopped talking about it, that people might forget that we're there. So even though we knew, hey, we can do this and we can Zoom, people were really critical at first when we were starting. And it was like, well, that's not real art. That's not real this. And we're like, that's nonsense, because this is what we've got for the next whatever.
Right.
So we started this weekly series, and it was exhausting because it was like, we have to scramble and get somebody, and then we got to interview them, and then we've got to render the film. I mean, you know how all that stuff works, right? But at the end, we started looking, and no one else was doing work, but we still were. And that was important to us. And then all of the stuff happened where we had George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and all of those things that are near and dear to our heart that we have been talking about, again, forever. We want people to have a platform. Everybody should be treated with dignity and respect. Suddenly that is here with us. So that found its way into our conversations. We revisited our diversity statement, and we spoke with leaders in the community to build it. And that was super important to us, all the while still continuing the dialogue. So somewhere in the summer, someone said, these are really super. And every once in a while, you guys are throwing in a play reading, which is what we were doing. We did our spring production via Zoom. How about you guys start just doing one monthly? And I'm like, that's actually a really good idea, because we're working really hard and it's every week, and we're not able to necessarily work on our craft. It's okay that we're talking, we need to talk about these other things. It's important, but we need to continue to do work. So I want to say it was August. I think it was about August. We decided, and we started with Matt Boyle's play, and 2 of them. And Matt is a local playwright who works out of Springville. So that was also important to us, that we had local people who were also getting an opportunity to see their work performed. We held an online edition, completely blown away. We had every slot filled, and we had way too many people than we had even parts. So we knew, like, people want to act, like, so what are we doing? So we figured, okay, let's revisit this in September. Well, we did, and more people wanted to act. So we selected more plays in September. And I believe September was Donna Hoke, who is another Buffalo playwright. She's amazing. Her work is incredible. And she said, I would love for you guys to stage these. And then as people started hearing that we were doing these every month, they said, hey, I've got some plays. Oh, I have some too. So we were able to open it up to playwrights who were not being able to produce. And although, we're very limited on props and things because we're doing it on Zoom, right? There's only so much you can see in your window. I think we do a really great job. And then somewhere along the way, we met this wonderful, wonderful man. His name is Chris Barker, and he's with Iconic Rocket Productions. And he had just moved to the area, and he started here as an actor, and he real quiet, doesn't say anything. Well, all of a sudden we find out in November, he's actually he writes plays, he writes screenplays, he's skilled with production. And I wrote a Christmas play for you guys. And I mean, it's one of those things, like, I have no idea where this even came from. Let's see, it was hilarious. So in December, we staged our first Christmas performance, our holiday performance. It was A Wonderful Life with Zombies. It was hilarious. And kind of body humor, and it was a full-length production. And to this point, it's probably our most viewed video. We looked the other day at something like 1,500 views on it, which is astounding, right? Like, so people saw it, and that's really cool. And then we said, well, we have to do this again. So long story short, we staged in January. Our next show is this next Saturday, the 27th at 8 p.m. We are featuring another local playwright, Madison Sedler, and we have 3 of her plays. And that's super exciting. And we will continue our monthly series. We also have, and I hope if anybody sees this, like, is interested, well, get in touch. one of the things we did last year that I missed was we did the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge. And in that time, you literally have 5 days to write, cast, direct, film, and edit, and submit. And this year we're doing it again. It's super cool. We are going to, from I think it's March 16th through 21st, we literally have a boot camp a day, and we are going to participate, and the outcome will be a film, and the film goes, it's international, and it's part of many of the film festivals. So it's a super cool opportunity. It's also awesome because we look at disability specific issues that maybe aren't talked about, or if they're talked about by somebody else without consulting. For example, a singer who will not be named recently did a movie that hired a non-disabled actor to play a role, and people are outraged both by their portrayal as well as how there was no conversation with people with disabilities. And we don't do that like that. You know, people that we represent and are in our stuff are part of that conversation. So that's how this disability film challenge will be. Hopefully it will be something funny, because I always like to do funny stuff, but if it's not, it's okay too. You know, there's always issues we can talk about, but it really is about promoting awareness. And it's not terrible, you know, when you have Hollywood and things looking at you. So that will be coming up next month. And then we have a spring production. And again, we will be continuing to stage, at least stage on Zoom, like, right, once a month throughout the remainder of the year, because we were hoping that we'd get together, and with the kind of erratic nature of the vaccine, we can't probably do that. So that will mean we'll have another Shakespeare online, and we'll have another Christmas show. So a lot of work that has been happening. We wanted to make sure we were still moving and grooving, but a lot of work that still needs to be done. And that's what's super exciting for me, because I've watched, you know, we were joking the other day, our first audition, I kid you not, no one showed up, nobody. And I remember sitting there thinking, what am I doing? We just had a second round of auditions on Monday night, and every single slot was full. And people were emailing after that were interested. And that's cool. Like, that's what we want. And I hope that if, you know, whoever watches this is interested, that they reach out. Like, this is a really cool opportunity for folks. You know, you're not put out there cold and saying, you know, figure it out yourself. Like, the people that work with Inclusive are absolutely terrific, and they mentor each other, and we all take care of each other. And kind of the running joke is like, you know, we get you in once, you're a member of the family forever, right? We take care of each other. And that's, at the end of the day, I think one of the most beautiful things that comes out of it, as well as, you know, some of the things I've heard from other people where, oh, I thought I was going to teach so-and-so this, when in fact they taught me the biggest lesson of my life. So it goes, the arts is that beautiful piece, right? But what it teaches and empowers us to do and changes who we are is the real magic, for me anyway. Like, I don't know what other people would say, but.
Oh no, I totally resonate with that. And that's really, really beautiful. And I love the fact that you guys have stayed busy throughout this entire era of pandemic, as I call it. And I think that's really, really beautiful. And the fact that you are changing people's lives even through this pandemic is amazing too. That's really cool. And your entire group, it's beautiful. You mentioned a few times that people connect with Inclusive Theater. How do people connect with Inclusive Theater?
So we're on Facebook. I don't know the actual thing, but just do a search. It's Theater ER.
Okay.
That will come to the page, and you can message. And once you rent your video, I can put it in the chat so people have it there as well. Can also email me at inclusivetheaterer of WNY@gmail.com. I man both, so I'll be there. Or, if they let somebody know, this is, hey, I'm interested, could you tell Aimee? I'm happy to connect that way too. And again, I can't stress this enough. I know this is often an issue that some people have. Like, you are welcome here. Like our doors are open. We embrace diversity. That is our tagline, right? Diversity, inclusion, and respect. This is not something that we say, it's what we practice. So, you know, if you are a little kind of like, I don't know if I could ever do that, give it a shot, right? Also, there's other things people can do. You know, I have people that want to direct that are getting opportunities now that maybe were a little pensive about it when it was a full stage production. But now that they can kind of do it from Zoom, they're like, oh, okay, this I really do like. You know, there's other roles of theater, just as how we have the film, right? Like, and then once we get back to meeting again, you know, we'll be back at writing group, which I will be starting again online. So that's the other piece. Nobody's off the hook for my writing group, and you know how all that stuff went. The writing group's important, and that's kind of become secondary, but we need to get back there because I want people who are not heard to write their stories so we can stage them, right? But this idea of welcome, give it a chance. There is no judgment. If you're not quite where you think you should be, we're going to give you the tools to get there. We're not putting people out there before they're ready. You know, we're working to get you to where you're at a level of comfort. So if you have any hesitation, just, you know, take that deep breath and reach out, and we'll figure out what we can do to kind of ease that discomfort, because the arts are for everybody. And especially the groups that people have said they are not a part of, right? Like, this beautiful tapestry of our life is filled with all kinds of different people. And when we don't look at that difference, we are missing all of the sunlight. It's just a cloudy day, right? So for me, it's like, you know, the more opportunity, the more diversity, the more different voices, the more beautiful our world becomes. And that, you know, from a personal standpoint, that's what I love about it, that I get to see people, you know, just flourish. You know, my artistic director, Dallas Taylor, was my student at Buff State, right? So I taught him. He never spoke in my class. Like, and he showed up one day for a writing group, and I had to like restate, like, did I pass him? Like, I don't even remember this kid. He now has a incredible job. He works for WNED. He is a fantastic photographer and film editor. All of these pieces that, you know, Dallas has just grown. And while he's growing on this journey, he's teaching others how to do it too. So to watch that development of somebody is the excitement for me, right? Like, I take no credit in that. That's them, but I'm lucky enough to watch it. And that's super, super cool for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's beautiful. And I love that. I love that you're a part of that. And I love the fact that by virtue of just being involved and like just taking action, you were able to make change, and just being a part of the group created that change, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and you got to see firsthand when we had one of the service learning groups, right? Like, you were there for one of those.
Yeah.
And to see somebody, oh, I thought I was going to come in and teach them acting. And they're like, they just taught me how to be a better person.
Yep.
Wow, like a novel idea, right? But that's what happens when you talk to people who are different than you are.
Absolutely.
And different in that you just have a different life experience. I don't mean physical. I don't mean, our lives are just different.
Absolutely.
And when we talk to each other and learn about those differences, we change. And that's super, right? So if we can do that anyway, whether it's through service learning or through, you know, a play that we're doing, a reading, or paintings, or whatever it is, that for me is what's important. And because that is world changing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's by seeing our differences that we see we have commonality. And by seeing our, you know, the unison in that, our differences, that we're all different in a certain way, allows us the ability to come together and be one, which in truth is beauty in itself.
Absolutely. And it also, when we have conversations, it stops the fighting. When we start to have that commonality, like you explain, right? When we know that the only difference is maybe the color of our hair or the color of our skin, but everything else is exactly the same, we're going to take that step and say, okay, well, how then can we resolve an issue?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to dismiss issues like surrounding some of the serious societal issues that we have going. I don't mean that at all. Those are much more deep than this particular example.
Mhm.
But for instance, you know, I had a conversation today with somebody about being able to change a font on a screen. Okay, basic stuff. And the response was, well, all they need to do is zoom in. And I took a step back for a minute, and I at first was kind of a little porky about it. I was not happy, and I said, this is accessibility 101. But when I took the step back, I was like, okay, this person is just uneducated in what accessibility means, but they're a human being, they're a very nice person. Let's have a conversation about that. And within a few minutes of that, it's like, oh my gosh, I completely misunderstood. I'm really sorry. So oftentimes, even that disagreement is from a place of misunderstanding. And through communication, through acting out our stories, because sometimes it's scary to tell them ourselves, right? We can kind of leverage that and at least to erase some of those things that might be right in the front, to have some dialogue. And that is where the real change takes place.
Absolutely.
When we're working together and we come together as human beings. And I think we often forget that. We saw, you know, with this last election cycle, you know, so many people losing friends over different political ideas and things. Like, that's horrible. It should not be that way. I understand why it is, but just think if we realize that, wow, you can have a different opinion and still be okay with each other, right? But then things changed and things got worse. But that's a whole other conversation for another day, right? It's a much bigger picture. But at the beginning, there were many conversations that weren't being had because people were just filled with hatred and anger at one another. And I think a lot of those things can go away when we can talk to each other and have like real dialogue, not just a, hey, I think this is great one time and then you're out. But ongoing dialogue will make change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Aimee, so much for sharing. I really do appreciate your time and your energy. This has been lovely. For those of you interested, please contact Inclusive Theater and also get involved with SA in Action TV. If you would like to see your content on our channel, please contact us at sainaction@gmail.com. We'd love to have your content. Have a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much,
Thank
Aimee.
you.